welcome everybody. Today we are going to explore how we inhabit our bodies. And what I mean by inhabit is, where do we operate from in our bodies? Where does our energy typically gather? Hey, Sen. And it's kind of like, where do we experience life from, both internally and externally? How we relate to people, how we relate to ourselves, how we relate to our surroundings depends on where we are located in our bodies. And we don't typically talk about that much. We just kind of go, what? Located? But, we can locate, for example, in our heads, where most people locate. Or maybe you kind of operate from your gut. Maybe you operate more from your peripheral, your arms and your legs, and you don't like that middle part so much. So it depends, and there's so many factors related to this that we'll get into. We're going to circle back to the theme that we've started with from the beginning, which is 1 foot in, 1 foot out. And what I mean by that is, whatever we're doing, we want to maintain an awareness in our own center, connected to spirit, the wide view, our true nature, whatever you want to call it. I realize today I'm going to say a quote, and one of the words is God. And that is a tricky word for people. So I want to give a caveat here. For me, God is consciousness itself. It isn't something, some external power, a guy that lives in the sky. It is our own consciousness itself. And what we're going to do is kind of get up close and personal today of, how do we experience our reality? How do our wounds shape how we see and experience the world? How have they affected and shaped how our perceptions are, how we see ourselves, how we experience ourselves, and how we go through our lives? And we're going to start by really, instead of grounding in our bodies, which I always do, we're going to ground in the wide mind today. Our bodies as well, but really that big picture, that which is bigger than us. When we can pull back, I think of it like a zoom lens, and we can see everything just wide, where our personal stuff doesn't get triggered. We don't have our judgments, our perceptions. We're just right there in the moment. And this quote that I was talking about, some of you have asked me, why is this body stuff so important to you? And I'm going to tell a little bit about my history, but essentially it's because I have a massive history of trauma. And I dissociated on a dime my whole life and didn't even recognize I was doing it. I just thought that everybody lived up in the clouds or on the ceiling, and came to recognize that no, not everybody lived there. And fortunately, I also liked nature and spent time in nature, and that grounded me. So I had some of both, but I really get how it feels not to be in one's body, and how that can be pretty frightening at times, and also just unsettling. So this quote that I first heard when I started doing trauma therapy, that really kind of helped me understand my own self and the people I was working with. And the quote goes like this: God sends the wound, God heals the wound, God is the wound. And to me, what that says is, a lot of times we want to distance ourselves with pain. We don't want to identify, as our pain, as a victim, etc. And yet, pain is one of the greatest teachers. I mean, it forces us and invites us to go deeper into ourselves and reclaim all those parts of ourselves that we don't like, we're afraid to feel, and that society doesn't want to touch often. And yet, that's how we become more fully who we are, not to be afraid of pain. I have this one friend that will always say, oh, that's negative. I'm like, it's just pain. It's just what we all go through. Let's embrace it, not as who we are, but as a part of ourselves. So that's what we're going to do today, is bring back ourselves. I heard this definition of creativity the other day, and I just loved it. And it's Creativity is the desire to express the fullness of who we are, of all of who we are. And when we can feel all of who we are, we get to express it. We get to revel in, and I don't mean creativity, you've got to sing or dance or whatever. I mean just feeling alive, feeling full, living our life fully, creatively, so there's joy. And so I'm going to start with a meditation. And so let's all get comfortable. And get where your back is supported, where you can rest and just let your body be. So bringing your attention inward, feeling free to close your eyes, keep them in a soft focus, and be exactly as you are. Don't fuss with anything, just let yourself get comfortable. Giving yourself this time to fully land. To fully arrive in this moment. Nothing to do, nowhere to go, just being. And as I give you a few cues, I want you just to touch in, notice, and let go. Not going into the analytical mind, just touching in the moment. So noticing how you experience your body right now. How does it feel to be in your body? How connected to it do you feel? No judgments, just touching in, noticing, and letting go. Notice your breath. How is it moving through your body? Do you notice where it moves easily and where it moves not so easily? Not changing anything, just being exactly as you are. What's going on with your mind? What do you notice about the quality of your mind right now? Notice your energy, how it's moving, where it's not moving. Not trying to change anything. And notice if, when I give a cue, your conceptual mind steps in and tries to change something. And I want you to invite in the quality of stillness, resting in stillness, whatever that is to you. Notice how there's even movement within stillness, such as your breath. Invite in the quality of space, wide open, empty space like the blue sky, vast, limitless. Feel that space fill up your body and your mind. Feel that space around you, expanding you beyond your body. Connecting you to consciousness itself, which is wide open, concretizes nothing. Everything just moves through. And feel this spaciousness, this consciousness as your true nature, your beingness. And at the very same time, feeling your body right here, right now. Bringing your mind to where your body is and being present. And yet feeling that hum of consciousness deep inside you, immutable, never changing, always there. And now begin to transition back to your waking awareness, but bringing with you this sense of where you are right now, of that connection to the wide view, to your true nature. And gradually you can start to stretch, opening your eyes. So I said that we would get up close and personal, and I meant it. I'm going to tell you a little bit of my history so you get a feel for kind of the journey I've been on, and I'm sure all of you have experienced, or many of you, similar things. So anyway, I'm going to start with my first memories of being inside a church. So I was brought up Catholic, and I was, I don't know, maybe 4 years old. And I was sitting in a church, and I started having memories or visions of women and children being dismembered. And I'm like, holy shit. And I'm seeing Jesus up there on the cross with blood dripping down on him, and hearing all these beautiful songs, and it was all very incongruent to me. And then I started having dreams of dismemberment when I slept. And I think as I look back, when I went into this, it was about cutting off parts of myself. And the church was like, this is wrong, this is wrong, this is a sin, you can't be this. And it just didn't sit well with me. I became more and more kind of disconnected and enraged, basically. So my resource at that time was nature. I basically lived outside. I had caves I would go in, a sand pit. I would talk to birds, trees. I felt the aliveness of nature and the sacredness of it. I really felt like it was spiritual for me. It was an ecstatic experience. And then I'd go to church, and it would be horror. And I didn't know what to make of it. So then I got sent to Catholic school, and it got worse because I was trapped inside all day. So I started acting out, and this began my career as an elementary school vandal. I started by trashing the girls' bathroom, and then I went on to trashing the gym, and I wrote things like, I hate nuns, and I sent them, through the years, I sent them hate mail. This is really sick. Freud would have had a heyday with this. I collected dog poop in a jar, mixed it with water, shook it up, and put it on the nun's car. And I was just enraged, and I was begging my mother to take me out of this school, send me to a boarding school, anything. But her name was Mary Virginia. She was brought up in a Catholic school, so that wasn't going to happen. So I just upped the ante and just became, more and more violent, until they were basically calling my mom about twice a week, because I only lived a block away from the school, so I could vandalize it without them ever catching me directly. But what was going on with me was I felt like I was in a fight for my soul. I really did. I felt like this beauty of nature that I felt was ecstatic and just became trashed. And I started believing that I was bad, because basically, they were telling me I was bad, and I was acting out in not such pro-social ways, as they say. So the other thing that saved me was, and this is where the disembodiment happened, I learned how to astral project. And so I would go out in a field where there were a few cows, they were my protectors, and I would do this little visualization where I would see all these kind of like geometric things kind of floating, and then I would bring them all together and I would shoot out the top of my head. And I would be, up in the sky, floating around, and it was such a feeling of peace. I loved it. I became kind of addicted to it. And it was how I managed what was going on at the school, and basically my rage kind of seeped over to home. And so I began acting out against my mother, and my mother was in the Navy. She was a complete control freak. I think she was gay, and she was married to my dad. She was very unhappy, and so she started just beating the shit out of me, just punching me in the head, throwing me against walls, just horrendous. And so I would spend a good deal of my time out of my body or in nature. It was those two things. It was kind of extreme in a way, of either out of my body or in nature. And I loved to dance. That was like, kind of like also ecstatic for me. So it created this split in me, which David will attest to, where I totally trusted spirit and nature, but I really didn't trust people. And, that took years and years to learn to trust. And fortunately, I had 3 sisters, and we were kind of there for each other, but we also, fought and all that like kids do. But in general, I was pretty tortured. as a kid, and very, very lonely and despairing, suicidal at times. And so I ended up kind of a mess and getting involved in addictions and, bad relationships and that kind of thing. And it led to the story where I started with, where I dissociated so badly that while I was driving, I went out of my body and I watched myself plow into another car. And I must have been going 2 miles an hour. And I watched myself driving in this car, and this lady gets out and she's like, what the fuck? And I'm thinking, what the fuck? What happened to me? Why did I do that? Like, what is going on? So I went home, and I happened to be dating a psychiatrist at the time, fortunately. That was part of my sex addiction. But anyway, so I call him up and he says, go to Boston University. I was living in Boston at the time. Go to their mental health unit and just pretend you're a student. So I did. And, thank God for therapists. They were kind. I told them right away, I'm really not a student here, but they hooked me up with a therapist and I started therapy. And so I started unpacking all this. And, you do the emotional, your family of origin and all that. And it was very helpful. But I was kind of stuck in just the therapy of emotional unpacking. And then I discovered meditation. And that was, I think I was 24 or 25. And that was what, oh my God, this is like astral projection, because I'd quit astral projecting when I was in adolescence. And so I discovered meditation. And it was like, oh, I'm home. I can be in my body and feel safe. So for me, meditation was, it was like coming home. It was like a lifesaver. And I couldn't believe that other people didn't know about it. I went to my therapist at the time and said, why didn't you tell me about this? Well, she didn't know about it. So anyway, I started HIIT meditation. I meditated daily from then till now. It just became a way of life for me and a way of being in my body and being present. Now, when I first started meditating, it was very mind-oriented. They didn't really pay much attention to your body. And so I discovered that I had parts of my body that was numb. For example, I was a exercise teacher. And I was into the abs of steel, and I would do like freaking a zillion sit-ups and all that, but I had no sensation. I had these incredibly strong abdominal muscles, and yet they had no sensation. And so I knew, like, what's up with that? And I knew it was psychological, but psychotherapy at that time didn't deal with the body, at least the kind I was in. And so it made me curious, like, why do I not feel my abdominal? Why do I not feel my torso much? That led me to trauma therapy. And trauma therapy was body psychotherapy, somatic therapy. And fortunately, Peter Levine was around here, and I got to study with him and with the people around him and started coming into my body, but understanding that those dismemberment dreams that I had and images, I was right. I was disconnected. And so to me, so much of somatic therapy is about coming home to ourselves and bringing those lost parts back so that we can express and be the fullness of who we are. And it's a lifelong process, I feel, coming into my body. I still have a tendency to be spacey. David will attest to that. I leave my purse places, things like that. I had to learn how to breathe fully, breathe into my back. It's like, back? What's my back body? I've never really noticed it. And learning how to trust. First of all, it's trusting oneself, trusting myself to take care of myself, to not act out, to not hurt myself. So anyway, that's kind of my story. And that's why this work to me is so integral. So it's not theoretical, it's very personal. But I also feel like I'm not alone in this. I'm sure there are many of you that have traumas in your body, that have had surgeries, that have just disconnected from places in your body where you have feelings you don't want to feel. where you also take on the body posture of those around you, like your parents. Like my mom was freaking military, so she was rigid, just rigid. And that just didn't fit for me because I was a dancer. I like to move. And so I was always kind of trying to figure out what is me and what happened to me. So what we're going to do today is I'm going to help you each explore what is you and what are the parts of you that you'd like to bring home so that you can feel more of who you are, fuller, more creative, more joyous. So any thoughts, comments, questions before we get started?
And thank you so much for sharing. It was amazing to get to know you a little bit better. And yeah, thank you. It just, yeah, very heartfelt. Thank you for sharing.
You're welcome. Thank you. You know, I appreciate this because I was nervous about this. And at the same time, this is my story. We all have our stories, and we aren't our stories, right? And yet they shape who we are. And so I look forward to helping you in your process, or maybe shining on a light to something you hadn't thought of before or felt before. So let's get started. Let's reclaim those parts. So I want you to get comfortable. Close your eyes. And just be as you are. Change nothing. Take a moment to notice where your energy is located right now. Where do you feel you experience the world from inside you? It might be where you feel your energy most gathered. What feels most familiar to you? And now bring your awareness to your lower body, from your lower belly down to your pelvic floor, your root chakra, down to your legs and feet, the lower third of your body, belly down. And imagine that you didn't have any body above you. It was just your lower body, and this is how and where you experience the world from. And notice how it feels to operate from your lower body. Does this feel familiar? What qualities of mind does this posture support? If there's a particular part or organ in this area that you'd like to explore more, go there. Perhaps it's your belly, perhaps it's your feet. How does locating here affect your perceptions? How does locating here affect your breath? How do you relate to your sense of self in this posture? Now, very gradually, open your eyes and notice how you relate to your surroundings from this area. And then just let it all go. Like you could just erase it on a chalkboard. Just let it all go. And close your eyes again and bring your awareness inside. And bring your awareness to your middle body. This is your diaphragm, your solar plexus, your colon, your heart. And notice what it would feel like to inhabit primarily this part of your body, as if there's nothing above it or nothing below it. How does it feel to inhabit that part of your body? And again, if there's a particular organ or area, let yourself explore that more in depth. Does this feel familiar? How does locating here affect your perceptions? Notice what qualities of mind this posture, this inhabiting this space supports. How does it affect your breath? How do you relate to your sense of self in this posture? And now open your eyes and notice how you relate to your surroundings from this middle area. And then close your eyes again and bring your awareness to your upper body, your head, your neck, your throat chakra, third eye, crown, your whole head. And imagine what it'd be like to operate from your head. going through your life from your head. Notice what qualities of mind this posture supports. Notice how it feels in your body. Does this feel familiar? How does it affect your breath? How do you relate to your sense of self when you inhabit your head? As if nothing below you even existed. And then gradually open your eyes. Notice how you connect to your surroundings from your head. And then just let it all go and just rest in emptiness for a moment. And then I want you to close your eyes again and imagine that you hung out, you existed, you located from your back body only, no front body, just your back body. Back of your legs, back of your head. Imagine going through life locating from your back body. Notice how that feels. Does it feel familiar? How does it affect the breath? How do you relate to your sense of self from your back body? And then gradually open your eyes. Let it all go. Empty it out. Close your eyes once more. And notice how it feels to locate in your front body. Notice what qualities of mind this location supports. Notice how this feels in your body. And let go of that for a moment. And bring your awareness to your heart. The heart. And feel where your upper body and your lower body can come together in the heart. Feel them both at the same time. And notice how that feels. How it affects your perceptions. how it affects your breath. Now bring in the front and the back body, in the heart. And feel your whole body, every part, together, whole. Notice how that feels. Notice what qualities of mind this supports. Notice how connected you feel to your true nature. And very gradually, begin to open your eyes, but bringing with you this sense of your wholeness, of your centering in your true nature, your connection to the wide view. Slowly opening your eyes when you're ready. One of the things that I notice about this exercise is how where we locate in our bodies impacts our entire reality, but also where we don't locate affects our whole reality. What are those parts of somatic amnesia? Those parts that we've just cut off from. And so this exercise kind of brings those to light in a new way. When I first did this exercise, I was kind of blown away. It was like, oh my God, I didn't even know that existed, certain parts. So I want to open up the floor to anyone if they'd like to share their experience.
Well, this is going to be a little disjointed, but I feel like my head is where I normally am, but I've learned a lot over the years and have chosen to come down into my body more often. And I probably come from the world about right here, sort of moving down into my body as I finally feel safe as I get older. But when you had us open our eyes, close our eyes, open our eyes, when I'm in my head, I can observe the beauty of this place. When I'm in my body, I can feel it.
Yeah.
That feels good.
It does, doesn't it? Mm. Yeah.
I was kind of surprised to find out that how much more comfortable I was with from the second chakra down, that I think that's where I oriented when I was young, like when you were talking about.
Mm-hmm.
Why I loved horseback riding, and I still need to walk every day. And then how I observe so much from my head, because I can kind of think with my head, but there was a whole just jumble in the inner area, just kind of bouncing around. It's like, where am I disconnected and where am I connected? And is there a connection? So that was fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah. It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
We take our kind of perceptions and where we inhabit in our body for granted. We don't really question it usually.
This was really powerful for me. Thank you, Jane. As you and David know, I've had several abdominal surgeries, and I don't have a colon. And I was not aware until we did this of the fact that I didn't have any feeling there in my lower belly. My legs, the rest of my body, further down, fine. but I became so aware of just like you talked about of not being able to feel your abdominals. That had never, and I've done a lot of therapy. I've done a lot of work on it, but this really made that clear to me. It's like, and that makes sense because that's where all the pain lives, and that's what I've been working at healing for 6 or 7 years. And so it was a big revelation for me of being able to reconnect that to the upper part of my body, which is where I've lived, especially during all of that body trauma. I kind of had to live from here up.
Yeah.
And because, things weren't functioning lower down. And I've kind of had this roadblock with some lingering things. And this just absolutely blew my mind and my body open, I think. So thank you. I can't say enough.
Oh, that's wonderful. That's wonderful. Yeah. I know that feeling of when suddenly you realize that part hasn't been online.
Yeah.
It's just been gone. It's like, and the process of reconnecting with kindness and gentleness and welcoming yourself back, welcoming it back.
Yeah. Loving that part, giving that part the love is really important. Yeah.
Absolutely. And when I talk about 1 foot in, 1 foot out, that 1 foot in is consciousness, wide mind. That's love. And to me, all healing comes from big love, wide mind, God, consciousness, whatever you want to call it. Yeah. Love heals. Yeah.
That was an amazing meditation. Like Cindy, I had different parts of my body, different thirds, connect or not connect. So my middle part was pretty easy and familiar, as was my upper part. But I noticed that I had the most disassociation from my lower third. And then I began to feel, some of my challenges in life have been feelings of security and safety. And so I could feel that sort of in my lower third. And yeah, there was some sadness that actually, came up. So it reminded me that when I do this, just make sure I feel the feelings, whatever comes up, because it was clearly some healing needed there. And the whole thing, I've been a master disassociator in my life. I mean, it's been a great coping mechanism. It made me survive difficult times. But I know it doesn't lead to living a full life, which you've helped me with for the 12 years we've been together. So, but I could see that even with all that, I have work to do on reconnecting that lower third that relates to some, safety issues.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes sense. Root chakra. Anybody else? I want to add something about in shamanism, they talk about soul loss, that we literally lose parts of our soul. And I think of soul as our spirit in our body, that, we rent it for a while we're here, and then it goes somewhere else and kind of goes into the big pot. But anyway, when we experience trauma, and some trauma of soul loss, for example, is as a kid when you move. And I'll have so many people in therapy say, well, I was great until 3rd grade when I changed schools. And then, that can be a soul loss. The loss of a parent, a pet, grandparent, of course, any sort of trauma. And I define trauma as any overwhelming life event that you just didn't have the tools to stay present with. So like David, dissociation allowed me to kind of exist. It was a coping strategy, but I came to see its limitations and its dangers. So when we have that soul loss and we bring those parts back to us, it's really important to do it very gently. And it's kind of like you build a little welcome community for them, you know, a little committee that says, yes, you know, I'm going to feel a little bit, I'm going to feel 1 or 2 cells of that. And then I'm going to let it come into the whole and integrate, and just do it very in small doses, small pieces, gently. Some people even make an altar to that part of oneself. You know, one of the things is just start giving it attention. Just start giving it attention. I mean, attention is kind of a big deal, you know, it's wherever we put attention is what grows and what flourishes. And so that's what I would recommend in terms of just welcoming these parts of ourselves home, and to stay with it for a while. Because they don't just, boom, come online right away, like, hey, here I am. You know, it's gentle. You know, when I was doing shamanic work, we'd go to this place called the Lost Cave of Lost Soul Parts, and it'd be like this little gnome kind of huddled in a corner, you know, I'd be like, hey, you know, and it'd be, you know, barely look at me. And that's, of course, anthropomorphizing it, but, you know, that's what we do. So doing it very gently, kindly, lovingly. And it reminds me of like when you're a kid, you have a figure and you're coloring it in. It's like coloring in those parts of ourselves that have been absent, giving them bright colors and a connection to the whole. So, is there anything anyone else would like to share? Questions, comments, noticings?
I really love today's meditation. It is so regulating for me to be in the body, and it's because I have been doing this practice of being in my body because I was dissociated in the past. So this is a really personal practice to me as well. And today it was so nice to realize how much at home I feel in the body, and I almost had tears of gratitude because that is such an accomplishment for me, and to feel home in the body. So it felt really nice, and yeah, thank you for this experience.
You're welcome. You're welcome. Yeah. And so one of the things I encourage us to continue is that 1 foot in the wide mind. At the same time, we feel our body, to feel that expanded consciousness. And, you know, last time we talked about the hum of consciousness that kind of exists in the background. And that's what I'm talking about, of just resting in that hum, and literally to hum. That vibration is very connecting, very grounding, and an easy way, besides the breath. The breath is one thing, but the hum is a different one. I don't know what it is about the hum. Anybody have experience with hum besides me?
Jane,
Yeah.
I tried to listen to the I missed last time.
Yeah.
So things glitched, but I heard the beginning when you were talking about humming, and I thought, well, I can do that because I can't sing. You know, I'm pretty shut down as far as that goes. And it really does raise your vibration. I mean, I was just kind of absent-mindedly. I can't do it without some music, but I can hum along with Emmylou Harris. But it really was a real vibration that you can feel. It was real pleasant.
Yeah, it really is. I mean, I can see why, you know, music is so powerful,
Yeah.
because it reaches us in that very primal, archetypal part of ourselves. It's vibration. Yeah.
That chanting, I mean, it's like chanting, but you don't have to think you've got to have a group to be chanting in. You can just,
Yeah.
in the car.
Yeah, it's interesting to me that the old Hindu, you know, kirtan has come back in vogue in recent years, I think since the 70s, really, because I think people are hungry for feeling whole, for feeling connected.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You don't
So,
know this, Jane, but doesn't humming, like activate your vega?
Yes,
Okay.
it does. And so it calms it, it activates it in a good way, not a trauma way,
Right.
but in a grounding way. Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have one question for everybody. And next time, I've asked people what would they like to have me explore. So a couple things came up. Trauma, how trauma affects us, how we deal with that, how we work with the pain body, how we increase joy, building a meditation practice that's really serves you. Anybody have any desires or requests? I could also continue on this bit and we could work with specific areas of your body and kind of fleshing them out. I'm getting a nod there. Nod.
And I think also kind of the global trauma that,
Oh,
I mean, just to kind of work with trauma because it's hitting us even if we personally don't have something going on that day.
boy, that's for sure. Yeah, you're right. It is everywhere. It's so prevalent. It's so overwhelming.
Yeah.
Yep, okay. I'll put that on the list.
Love that. And I think all of the above, Jane. I mean, that was a great list. And I mean, I think everything you rifled off affects everybody on some level.
Okay, that's great. Well, thank you, everybody. I'm going to do a little bell for us. I adjusted, Laura helped me figure out how to adjust this so that the mindfulness bell doesn't go in and out. So let's try it. And you might just take a moment to feel the vibration in your body. Thanks, everybody. Have a great month.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.